I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like YouTubers don't really talk about video game music when it comes to how a video game can be impactful and how it can shape your view of everything. I feel like video game music is one of the key factors, for me at least, that makes a video game memorable and enjoyable and stand out from all the rest. I can play an amazing game with a very decent story, great characters, good combat, but if the music isn't that memorable, I probably won't hold it as high in a regard as I do some of my favorite games of all time. I'm not saying people don't talk about it at all. I've seen some video game essay YouTubers talk about music in particular when discussing a game, but I feel like not many people talk about just the music itself and how it makes you feel. I'm a big music guy. I play guitar, I listen to music all the time, and there's even been periods where I'll listen to music while falling asleep. I love video game music especially. I don't mean to sound like a nerd when I say that, but it truly is some of the best music of all time. In this video, I want to discuss when video game music is life-changing, particularly in the Dark Souls franchise. If this video does well and you guys enjoy this video, I might make a sole dedicated video to other video games music if that is something people would be interested in. Dark Souls is a franchise that needs no introduction. You've seen it all over your YouTube, you've probably even seen it on TV at some point. It is a series that plagues the earth. It is beloved by many, and for very good reason. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And there's no game that instills this sense of dread better than Dark Souls, in my opinion. And a big factor of that is the sound design and the music that accompanies you throughout the world. Most of the game is silent. There's not really much music that plays when you're exploring the overworld. When you kill enemies, it's just the sound of the world around you, the sound of your footsteps. But when you get to certain areas, music will play, and that makes it much more impactful in my opinion. I feel like I notice it in a video game more. For example, I'm going to use Silent Hill 2 because it does this a lot, where it doesn't play music very often and it kind of just relies on the sound of the environment around you. I feel like I notice a song more in a video game and it sticks out to me more when it just kind of appears like out of nowhere, or there's a specific reason, like it's a boss fight or in specific enemy encounter. Just any point where there's silence and then there is a song afterwards, whether it's somber or intense, I feel like it sticks out in my mind more. And Dark Souls will do this a lot. There's hardly any areas that play music, but the ones that do, you definitely won't forget it. Prime example in Dark Souls 1 being Firelink Shrine, one of the best hub areas in any video game ever for its calming and captivating sense of loneliness, but it's also just a very fun area aesthetically. It's very dark, it's very grim. And one of the things I appreciate about Firelink Shrine and a lot of the hubs in the Souls franchise are these hub areas. They don't just feel like hub areas. They feel like actual little civilizations. This actually feels like a sanctuary for people. It really does feel like the people you find in Firelink Shrine, they're going on this treacherous journey like you are, and they found this little corner of the world that no one knows about, and they just decided to migrate there because that was the safest bet. This hub and Magula feel the most grounded in reality to me, and this is why they are my favorite in the franchise. Other hubs such as the Nexus, while being one of my favorites, absolutely, it doesn't give the same grounded vibe that Firelink Shrine or Magula does. That being said, it has one of my favorite songs in the entire Souls franchise. The Nexus theme is the best way I could put it is longing. Like, it's amazing. I love it. I can't really find a great word to describe it. Maybe you guys can. But one of the things I love about it are those little intermissions of silence in between the song where the song kind of stops and then starts again. It stops and then it starts again. It's one of my favorite things by far about this song. It's just so calming and one of the most sleep-worthy songs in Dark Souls. And I think even though it is calming, it is a little bit eerie given how massive the Nexus is and the story behind the Nexus. It's just kind of a weird vibe, in my opinion. Another area that elicits this weird and ethereal vibe would have to be Ash Lake in Dark Souls 1. The moment you step into Ash Lake and you hear that like opera, that chanting, it is unbelievable. It is a feeling I can't describe, and I can't think of a video game that has gave me an emotion like that before. It's been a while since I've played a game where I'll encounter an area or I'll find something and I literally just sit there, look at my screen, and I think, whoa, this is what Ash Lake did to me. And Ash Lake as an area, it's beautiful, but it's so creepy. Like the trees that are just massive, seemingly never ending in the distance, the Hydra and the other enemies that don't seem like they belong in this world are just chilling down here. How did the Hydra get down here? How did these clams get down here? Is this like remains of like one of the old worlds before the fire was rekindled? I don't know the whole lore behind it, but I'm just kind of spitballing. And then when you get to the end, there's like this dragon god guy just looking at you, and he's like, hey, like what's up, man? And I think this is elevated by the fact that this is one of the only areas in Dark Souls where music plays as you walk through it. Music doesn't play as you walk through Undeadburg, or walk through the catacombs, or heck, even walk through the final area of the game. But this ethereal, almost hypnotic-like chant is playing through the entirety of Ash Lake, and that just makes it so much more unsettling that this is the only instance in the game. The best way for me to describe it is it feels like you stumbled upon an area that was supposed to be cut content, cut from the game completely, but the developers forgot to cut it and they just kept it here. And it's too late. They can't unrelease the game and cut out the area. It's just there now. That's what it feels like to me. Ash Lake feels like a piece of cut content that you were never meant to find, but you can actually find. And this wouldn't be a video of me talking about Dark Souls music if I didn't talk about Gwen's theme and the credits theme. Gwen's theme has to be one of the best final boss themes in any video game, period. It's so melancholic, it's so powerful, and it's so symbolic of Gwen slowly losing himself after rekindling the fire over and over and over. It's really sentimental. It's really sad to see Gwen, who used to be this powerful figure full of life and full of strive, devolve into this hollow husk of an old man, a guy that solely keeps going to relink the fire again and again just to keep it going. And then, but at the end of the day, you know, it's all meaningless. He's just destroying himself and everybody around him. It's a really sad story when you look into it, and I feel like the song is symbolic of that. And after you beat the game, you get the wonderful credit song that is the Nameless song. Also symbolic for how you give your character a name, but honestly throughout the game you're a nameless hero. And when you think about it, you know, we're all nameless heroes in our own way. I would have to say this is probably my favorite soundtrack in all of Dark Souls 1. I wouldn't say in the entire Souls series, because there is one that is just infinitely better and you can't beat, and we're going to talk about that one in a second. I'm sure you know what it is, but Nameless Song has to be the most appropriate credit song for a game like Dark Souls. It makes you feel like you're done. like after the trials and the hardships that you went through all of Dark Souls 1. In fact, you might say, oh, it's one of the hardest games ever. After everything you went through, this song feels like a moment of reprieve. It feels like you finally did it. You completed this monumental task. And that's how I know when a video game is good. When I beat a video game and at the end, I don't just think, man, that was a pretty good game. I'll think at the end of the game that I'll literally be sitting in my chair. I'll be like, wow, that was phenomenal. And it'll make me feel something. I know when I like a game, when after I beat it, I think about it for weeks on end, and I might even want to make a video about it. Next, we have Dark Souls 2. Now, I'm going to just throw this out there. I think Dark Souls 2 is kind of underrated. Dark Souls 2 has kind of been going through a renaissance over the last couple of years, where I feel like I've been seeing a lot of people gravitate towards it and respect it out of all the games in the franchise. This used to be the game where everybody would just shit on it and say it's the worst entry, there's nothing redeemable about it, but I feel like people are kind of coming around now and they're recognizing that Dark Souls 2 does some things right. Honestly, I love Dark Souls 2 the most aesthetic-wise because to me, it feels the most alive out of all the Souls games. Yes, I do love the dreary, drab, and lonely aesthetic of Dark Souls 1 and 3, but I like Dark Souls 2's sense of life, and for lack of a better term, kind of like friendship along the game. You meet a ton of NPCs throughout the game, and all of them feel like very close friends that you kind of haven't seen since high school. You know, this like the guy who's under the rubble and the shaded woods, that's what it's called, in the shaded wood area. I feel like that's some guy I wouldn't have talked to for like 5 years since high school, and then I found him in some weird situation and he's just like, oh hey, you know, long time no see. Dark Souls 2 is also the brightest out of all the Souls games. It has a very bright color palette, which I feel like that might be why it's not some people's cup of tea, but in my opinion, yes, it did look a little weird when I first played the game. I'd be like, oh, this doesn't look like Dark Souls at all. But after I played it a few more times and, you know, played it for years, I began to appreciate it more, and I began to appreciate how the game looks more. And in my opinion, it's one of the better looking Souls games. Just throwing that out there. But that sense of friendship I was talking about has to definitely come from the hub area in Dark Souls 2. Everybody will swear that Magula is the best hub area, it has the best music. This is just an undeniable fact. You can't convince me otherwise. Magula is what home feels like in a video game, and it has the same sense of being just this little corner of the world that people decided to migrate to because it's the only safe area in this messed up world that Firelink Shrine had in the first game. My biggest issue with hub areas like the Nexus and Firelink Shrine in the third game is they feel very disconnected from the world. Some people would say Dark Souls 2 felt disconnected in that the world design doesn't make sense, and in some areas, yeah, you do have to suspend your disbelief, but honestly, it's pretty connected, very similarly connected like Dark Souls 1, at least when it comes to the hub area. And that would be the fact that you could go to Forest of Fallen Giants, the Gutter, Shaded Woods, or Hyde's Tower of Flame, all at the beginning of the game if you really want to. But I'm getting sidetracked. The Magula theme has to be the best song in the Dark Souls franchise. It's calming, it's serene, it makes me long for a place that I can't go to anymore. It's very nostalgic. Even when you listen to the song for the first time, it's nostalgic for some reason. This song sounds like childhood to me, but not like the wonderful, like bombastic, adventurous feeling of your childhood. It feels like that feeling of childhood when you're an adult, which I'm an adult now, so I've been thinking about this a lot. When you're an adult and you want to go back to the simplicity of your childhood and not having like any of the worries that you have now, and just wanting to be at a point not only when you were younger but everybody else was younger. And I feel like this is very fitting with the theme of Dark Souls 2 and some of the lore implications. So I can't help but feel that Magula did this on purpose. Magula reminds me of a big friendship that I had when I was a little kid. And if he watches this video, hey man, how's it going? But when I was a kid, I used to have this friendship with this one guy, and we were like best friends, absolutely inseparable. And Dark Souls 2 was always my favorite because, one, it was his favorite too, and that is kind of what made us bond. We bonded over Dark Souls, and I remember us specifically bonding over like talking about Magula. And both of our older brothers also loved Dark Souls, so that was immediately something we could talk about. So after that, we got along, we talked to each other more, yada yada yada. And then eventually we played the Souls games ourselves. And we played Dark Souls 1, thought it was okay, played Dark Souls 2, loved it, played Dark Souls 3, thought it was great. But our favorite to come back to was always Dark Souls 2. And this is where that feeling of friendship comes from, in all honesty. The soundtrack to Magula reminds me of those little intermissions when he and I wouldn't be going through the game, but we would go back to Magula and just talk to each other like through the headset while we were in Magula, like leveling up, buying stuff, upgrading our weapons, what have you. It would remind me, when I listen to Magula's theme, it reminds me of that. Those little intermissions where he and I would just talk about whatever while we're in Magula doing our own thing before we go back to brave the world of Dark Souls 2. And in all honesty, I think that's the moment from our friendship that I miss the most, and that Magula really makes me think of. Magula makes me think of my childhood when I had a best friend that I would just always spend my time with, someone I could always talk to. It reminds me of playing outside in the yard with my pets that are long gone, and this is why Magula just speaks to me so much. It takes me back to a more simple time where I had more friends, and yes, I'd say I'm closer with my family now than I was when I was a kid, which I'm very thankful for that. But it does take me back to a time where I didn't worry about things I do now. I had a best friend that I hung out with very regularly. I would play games with regularly. Somebody that we were unapologetically ourselves with, and I just miss that. I miss having somebody to play Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3 with every year. And honestly, if anybody in the comments would love to do that, let me know. I'd love to play. I'd love to play some Dark Souls games. Maybe have a full 3 to 4 person co-op session sometime. That'd be awesome. But anyway, I think I'm pretty much done with this video. I don't really have any songs to talk about in Dark Souls 3 because Dark Souls 3, while its soundtrack is also great, there's only really one example that I can think of, the Abyss Watchers theme, and I don't have as much to say about it as I do with Magula. So I just want to say I might make a dedicated video on Dark Souls 3 at some point, or a couple of the other games, and maybe some other games that I'm interested in. So if you guys like this video, if you enjoyed it, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and check out my other stuff. And if you enjoyed this, I'll make a part 2 or something like that. Thank you guys. Have a great day.